Discover the power of music to heal and uplift. Introducing NeuroVibe, where rhythm meets recovery. NeuroVibe fuses ambient music textures with rhythmic layers to create music that goes beyond relaxation. It's crafted to resonate deeply, perfect for relaxation, self-reflection, or therapeutic sessions. NeuroVibe invites you to connect with your inner self through immersive sound. Explore NeuroVibe today on SoundCloud and experience the transformative power of music. Tune in, find your vibe, and discover what NeuroVibe can do for you. For more information, check out NeuroVibe on SoundCloud today at soundcloud.com/NeuroVibe-BrainSpotting. NeuroVibe is intended for general wellness and relaxation purposes and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Explore NeuroVibe now on SoundCloud. Dive in, find your rhythm, and feel better with NeuroVibe.
Welcome to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered with Perry Clark. This program looks at mental health from unique perspectives and shows you how to manage your life by finding the knots that help you and stay away from the ones that could be a disadvantage. Now, here is your host, Perry Clark.
Hello all, welcome back to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist here with you, and I want to remind you as always, this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only, does not constitute working with a mental health professional. Please seek out a mental health professional in your area. So today's interview, this is another of those follow-ups from Big Bad Con 2024. I attended a panel discussion that and I forget exactly what the panel discussion name was again, and that's my bad.
Was it my panel?
It was your panel.
Oh yeah, I didn't make the title of the panel, so I forget what it was too. Whoever did it was like, here's the name of your panel. I was like, okay, whatever.
Gotcha. But it related to a question you had asked on Twitter, which was a big one there. And I know when I walked in and also saw what he was wearing, I said, wait a minute, I've recognized that sweater from, because I was looking at that exact same catalog. And obviously you just heard his voice there. But today we're going to be introducing and interviewing Mark J., who is a TTR performer, producer, and co-founder of Apochromatic Unlimited, an all POC gaming space. Mark is also the host of the None Shot podcast, where he connects with fellow game professionals about culture and race and the TTRP, or tabletop role-playing, spaces. So, Mark, welcome to Untying Knots.
Thank you. Very, very happy to be here. It's an honor.
And I'm grateful you were willing to come on. And as I always start most shows is, how did you get here?
Oh, that's such a good question. Wait a second. It's a good question. I never ask on my own podcast. So I'm like, I don't know, whatever. How did I get here? I started playing games, like role-playing games, when I was in the Army. I was stationed in Alaska, and in Alaska, at least when I was in, the only thing to do was fight, get drunk, and catch an STD. And so I was a medic, and I saw all the STDs, and I said, you know what, I don't want to do that. And so one of my friends introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons version 3.5e, and I played a little bit back in the day, and I got back into it in 2018, around there, 2017, 2018. I was going through a really tough bout of depression, and my therapist, who was an excellent therapist, said, Mark, you need to go do something. Like, the therapy is good, the meds are working, but you also have to go do something with your life. I was like, okay. I used to play D&D. I could try that again. So I played D&D for a bit. I got caught up with a really amazing group of people. The Everrealm Adventures was the name of our party. We had a podcast. We won the Blurred Podcast of the Year in 2022 for our show, for our performances, and the great GM. And I got into the space after that. I was invited to a game, and things just kind of spun up from there. I really had no clue what I was doing when I first got started, and I really don't know what I'm doing now. because it's all just new and interesting. And when I talk with other professionals and they tell me stuff that I should be doing, I'm like, oh, you know what? I should have been doing that, but I'm just winging it half the time. So I'm trying my best, and I think I'm being not probably appreciative of my own skill, but yeah, we founded Apochromatic because we wanted a space for all people of color. Um, we just saw a lot of games that were all white, a lot of spaces that were majority white, and we said no one's going to do it for us, so
Hmm.
we'll have to build it on our own. And we've had a lot of ups and downs since then with Apochromatic Unlimited, but it's been a real treat, I would say, because I've been able to connect and meet with so many people and have so many great conversations on my podcast and beyond. And yeah.
Yes, and I've been listening to your episodes of your podcast. I think I'm up to episode 12 at the moment.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Yep, working my way. When I can, I try to work my way through any of the archives of anyone's work if I can, so that I can hear the depth and range of stuff and number of the conversations. I mean, especially was very much enjoying the conversation you had with your panel on the World of Darkness and Vampire the
Oh, yeah.
Masquerade.
Mm,
But equally, I was also very much enjoying listening to your one from the Body and Soul project you guys did
yeah.
as well, which I was very much raptured watching / listening to that one as well.
Yeah, the panel on the World of Darkness, it started because a buddy of mine, Paul, who's also one of the founding members of Apochromatic Unlimited, he's got a long history with the World of Darkness from LARPing back in the day. And if you ask, one of the things when you talk to some people or you ask them a certain question and that's their trigger and they're going to talk for the next hour
Mm-hmm.
about that topic, whether you're really listening or not. But that was one of his things. And I wanted to explore that more. And I happened to meet with B. Dave Walters, who is a great guy. And B. Dave Walters was there, but also one of the founders of one of the, I don't know, founder, but like one of the original creators of the game. He worked on the original game and kind of
Mm-hmm.
helped guide it through the early years. And we all happened to be in the same place at the same time and had a long talk about some of the things. Anyway, that's how that panel came together. And I just wanted to meet with people like that, people who had experiences, kind of older gamers who've been through the full spectrum. We've seen it kind of from the beginning to now and how it's changed. So that was really important for me to get that conversation recorded because I just feel like there's not a lot of space for older gamers and all the younger gamers. Y'all about to be old any second now. You're gonna look around like, oh damn, I'm old. So I wanted to have space for some older gamers to talk about their experiences because I'm getting older. I'm like, oh, people are starting to die and
Mm-hmm.
their wisdom can be lost sometimes. And I don't want those perspectives of older gamers who've been through those experiences to be lost. Um, I just want to make sure that we're preserving those experiences. It's really important to me. So yeah, that's how that kind of came together.
Very much so. And B Dave has been on this show as well.
Yeah,
So I've had the fortune of that conversation, but I very much hear what you're saying about the idea of old gamers and especially old gamers of color too,
yeah, absolutely,
as opposed
absolutely.
to most of the this entire genre and hobby has been very much white centric.
Yeah, we I'm a newcomer to this space specifically, but I gotta respect the people who came before me and paved the way for me to be here um, through the kind of winding road of like gaming and just being a presence in the space. So I
Hmm.
gotta respect the people who've been there in the front and behind the scenes, and I want to make sure we're capturing those moments. Yeah, because those voices aren't appreciated, in my opinion. No.
Hmm.
I don't know if I hear a lot of interviews from older white gamers, and they're all like, "Oh, I remember the old days of D&D," and I'm like, "Cool, but who are we not talking to?" And so I just want to make sure we're getting those vibrant voices that live through so much. That's really important to me.
Very much so. And the aspect of also dealing with how the industry has gone through its own development cycles and its own
Yeah.
crush cycles.
Yeah.
Equally, like the Satanic Panic and such that also happened, and just dealing with certain, POC families, the idea of devil is even more dangerous. And the idea that you're off in the fantasy world and not reality is also a very big struggle
Mm.
in our communities as well.
That's always such an interesting topic. Some fantasy worlds are very much accepted, whereas others are belittled and shunned, and demonized. So it really just depends on what fantasy world you want to talk about. Certainly ones involving D&D and things like that back in the day, were scary for people, but you know, you're not look people who dislike that and demonize that weren't looking at the bigger picture and how much those things were bringing people together, but not in ways that you thought were acceptable. So everyone's got their own fantasy they buy into, I think, at some level. Some are socially acceptable, some are much less so. But I'm happy that people were able to come out of that, especially Black folk were able to come out of that with their sanity and those gaming experiences through the years. So.
Sorry, we got a little background noise at the moment.
Oh, is it coming from me?
No, it's coming from me at the moment. So, well, I'm next to an airport and somebody decided they were going to have a conversation by the window I'm next to.
Oh, gosh.
But yeah. And especially how it also then cycles back to us again. Where does our stories get told and not told?
Yeah, absolutely. I look through this every day. I'm looking at YouTube and there's an algorithm. And of course, I like TTRPG, D&D stuff, so they show me a lot of that. And I just never see a black face, a brown face, any person of color. If I do, it's very rare, or they're one amongst a group of other white people. And so those voices are not being heard because I know I GM'd at BlurredCon, the DM'd at BlurredCon in 2023 last year. No, 2024, just this last year. This is 2025 already. Okay, 2024. And the number of Black folk that wanted to play and learn to play D&D, I shouldn't have been surprised, but I'm always surprised. I'm always surprised because the room is packed of people wanting to play D&D. And so there's lots of us playing the game, but we don't necessarily want to or know how to or are interested in those larger spaces of the bigger screen, the bigger popularity or whatever, where it's majority white faces talking about their experience with games. And again, when I'm looking at YouTube videos, I'm like, yeah, you white YouTube content creators are not saying or doing anything if differently than a lot of us are doing already. So
Right.
it's why can't people of color step into those spaces and have the same success that you do? It's curious.
That is an eternal question in so many other venues as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I know one of the big ones there is just the sense of value and self-worth is a big one.
Yeah.
And balancing point between, am I selling out or am I staying true to what I'm also putting out there too?
Yeah.
Because I think that's always going to be an aspect of when you're building relationships with any of the companies, especially if the company's got the money to be able to bankroll a production. And that's just its own thing altogether in just getting into the actual play and production side. I've just sort of been watching versus just the hobby itself and having that time with your friends.
Yeah. I tell my group that I've told them frequently at Apochromatic Unlimited of like, making an all POC space was probably the worst thing we could have done for popularity's sake. Like, no one's gonna start throwing money at us, or it's highly unlikely for a while because we're an all POC space because we make games that are only POC focused. And it's just the reality of situations. Like we're gonna make our art and our games and have fun regardless. But we're not, if we garner any acceptance from outside the space, we'll welcome it, but we're not seeking it either, I think. At least I'm not at this point, at least at this stage of my, wherever I am in this journey.
Well, I think there's also the standpoint of one of the realities of also the stories we will get to tell, and sometimes the aspect of the villain of the story is not the ones that are necessarily good for publicity.
Can you say the last part one more time?
I said they're not always the ones that are best for publicity.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. They don't necessarily generalize out. They're not necessarily stories of high fantasy and romance and drama that don't generalize out into the mainstream population. But they're not any less worthy. In many ways, they're more worthy, those stories that are being told.
Oh, very true.
And it provides so much depth. Wow, that's the POC tables that I've seen and been in, the level of depth. And I produced a game of Junksha written by Curry in the Game Press. And it was an all Asian table.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm sitting there watching the game unfold, I'm like, no one in the world can tell this story. No one in the world can have this experience of four East Asian people, 4 or 5 East Asian people coming together and telling a story that of this viewpoint that only they can have. And I was just really proud to bring that together, because it's so beautiful. It's so deep to see, like, oh, this is like, I as a Black man don't understand what it's like to be Asian right here, and I'm just watching. I'm like, oh, this is y'all how y'all really are. So just being able to appreciate those perspectives. And again, I think as it relates to TTRPGs in general, having POC tables can be so beneficial to the mainstream population, because they can see that type of depth. They can see how different things are, but also relate to how similar things are. Look at the similarities as well. So I think that kind of thing is very powerful.
Very true. Very true. And just for those listening, could you also give us the synopsis of what Jingxi is for this particular game and why it was so powerful? Because then I want to talk about body and soul.
I'm gonna look it up real quick, because I know that one of the makers of the game was Banana Chan, who was one of really brilliant game developers. But I know that they weren't the only person on the team who worked on it. So there's like quite a few really talented people who worked on the team. But it is based on a Chinese restaurant in, I think, the 1920s and 1930s, when there was it's like, oh, there was a lot of racism back then. Well, what does that mean? Back when there were big populations of big centers of Chinese immigrants, and you play as a family that owns a restaurant, and you deal with kind of the outside forces kind of come in. You deal with these vampires, these spiritual forces that are also working against you, and how the family can come together to overcome both is the overall theme of the game. And it's incredible. Okay, so the creator is designed by Banana Chan and Sun Fung Lim, both Chinese immigrants, according to their page. But yeah, it's one of those things that I can never make that game. I can never make a game about a Chinese restaurant in the 20s. That's not my experience. That's not my history. It's not my culture. But it's beautiful to see other people have that experience, and just to participate in that from the sidelines, even still.
Kind of similar is the comic Bitter Root, which I think is also set in that same time period.
Yeah.
And has some similar story themes as well. But then, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think it's in trade paperback at this point for Bitter Root. But then let's talk about the big one I got to see you and Candace the Magnificent, who's also been on the show, perform in, which was Body and Soul, which is
Yeah,
definitely the
yeah.
black version of that aspect of it.
When you kind of think about it, yeah. Myself, Candace, Stefan, Huddleston, Q goes by Q, and Liz all started in that performance. I don't know, when I get invited to stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, really? Y'all know me? Y'all think about me? Like, so I'm always very surprised,
Mhm.
um, but
I
happily
share that feeling.
surprised and and humbled. Honestly, I don't like. Anyway, I'm humbled to be part of that. It was one of those things where I going into it where I knew what I thought I was gonna do, but I kind of didn't. I missed the first episode because it was my sister's birthday, and she wanted to go to a. She loves graveyards. That's like
Mm.
her thing. Cemeteries. She loves cemeteries,
Hmm.
and we went on a Black History tour of the cemetery where there were. I think it's like not the Congressional Cemetery is one of them, and here in D.C. But there were slaves buried with their masters. There are slaves buried with no names. There are some very historical Black people from the Civil Rights era and more. But just seeing the tour guide was a white guy, and so hearing Black history from an old white guy, and I was like, oh wow. Anyway, so when I came back to the show, I had that perspective of like it's really important that we express our history from our mouths. So that's what I showed up in the body. It's on the second episode, and I kind of had that perspective when I went into it. A Body and Soul, we played four gods based on African deities who had come from the motherland of Africa to America via the slave route, the
Mm.
enslaved people who still believed in us brought our characters with them, and so we lived um, lived and were amongst enslaved people into the 20s, 30s, and beyond until like current era. So we
Mm.
played gods who interacted and mingled and influenced different parts of Black history. So it was really cool. It was really fun to inhabit those characters, I thought.
Well, especially the message you were bringing, as in this case, the god representing death and end of life.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, like I said, I came from that cemetery and I had a different perspective. But I kind of thought of that character ahead of time of just kind of what does what is death? You know, like what does that mean when people die? What does it mean for Black folk when we die? What do we leave behind? What do we, what do our lives mean? I think that's, obviously one of the age-old questions of what do our lives mean? What was it all for?
Hmm.
So my character, Buna, who was one of the gods of death, he could see the impact of a person's death, obviously like ripples over a body of water. I could see
Hmm.
the waves through time of the impact of someone's death. And we've all experienced loss in our life where someone dies and how that impacts, but it's not just the ground zero of that one person's death. It's like waves in water. It's a flow outwards of how that one person's death can affect a friend, a family, a community, and for some people, the rest of history.
Hmm.
So I wanted to just have that reflected in my character and have that be able to carry that weight of that character who can see the impact of people's lives and of people's deaths. It was a lot of fun.
Well, I think there's also some elements of what you already talked about in your past that also
Hmm.
come in reflection there, just even the standpoint of your experience as an army medic.
Yeah, yeah. When I DM games and I have like there's sometimes when I write a character dying, the heroes kill an enemy, and I'll write their death scene, and at the end of it, I'll ask my players, "Oh my God, I wrote that death scene. Are you guys all right?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're fine. We killed him." But I'm in my mind, I'm like, "Oh no, I killed this guy, and I wrote a really long death scene." To me, it means a lot
Mhm.
to see someone pass away, violently or otherwise. But to be with someone as they're dead or dying, it's a really powerful experience. And so I think it's really important that we honor those kind of experiences because they're rare and fleeting. But again, like I try to portray with my character, they have an impact. They're ground zero for a whole wave of of cascading emotions and feelings and experiences for a
Mhm.
number of people. So each kind of life carries that weight, and when it ends, I always want to make sure that it's being respected in some way.
Very true, because it's a very different relationship with death that can exist for all of us,
Yeah,
especially compared to, again, what's that by the standard Western Euro idea of it. But going back into our deeper culture standpoints of it, and just even our own personal meanings for it.
yeah. I always reflect on that of how our culture honestly just doesn't care about anything, and that's very pessimistic to say, but we don't hold on as a culture, big picture. We don't
Mm.
hold on to pain. Um, Let me make sure what I'm saying is correct and represents what I'm saying. We can look at slavery and the horrors of slavery for hundreds of years, but the culture says move on. Don't worry
Mhm.
about the past. We can look at indigenous people and the genocide of indigenous people, but the culture said, let's put these people in schools and re-educate them and make them American and help force them to move on. Right? We can look at just throughout history that has repeated itself.
Mhm.
Even from my life, um, 9/11 happened, and we still feel the impact of that, but we haven't processed it. Instead,
Mhm.
we just are still very reactive to those kind of outward forces, like, oh, this thing could hurt us, so we need to react and pre-react to things. But we don't process what those things mean and how it affects individuals in their day-to-day lives. I think it's very interesting. I mean, we can see like the generational causes of pain, um, generational sources of pain, and how they can affect people present day.
Mhm.
Um, because someone back then had an experience and they're probably told, hey, you just keep it going, you keep moving, don't worry about it, and they pass on that pain to further generations and all around them potentially. Um, but yeah, that's it's it's just I feel like we don't give ourselves the time to process our experiences that often as a culture.
Which is funny because I think games like what you guys did in Body Soul, is just a moment of doing that processing. While it might not be as individualized, it is a collectivized aspect of us processing our past, our future as well.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree with that sentiment. It's definitely what I thought we were trying to bring to the table. Um, was an opportunity to explore grief and to explore. For me, it was grief because my character was the god of death,
Mhm.
but for other characters, explore history and explore life and explore joy, and just to sit with those emotions and then allow and to view them, but also to experience them and see them. So yeah, we really tried our best to give respect to the totality of the human experience. God, that sounds so deep. We were just playing games, y'all. No, I'm just kidding. Everyone had a wonderful performance, truly. But I
I
think
think
we
one of
did
the
want to give respect to so much of our history and process the good and the bad of it.
yeah, I will also say one of those other underlying things is also connection and relationship, which I think is also a very key element for our people's existence and way of functioning in the world as well.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I agree. I was talking about BlurredCon, which is a con in DC. I think it's been going on for a good maybe like 10 years or so, maybe probably longer. But it's just for Black nerds. And it is a big convention of Black folk getting together and being and just nerding out.
Hmm.
And when I went there the first time, my mind was blown. And every time I've been since, my mind is blown. But just that idea of connection, of coming together to be like dorks and like in anime and games and all kinds of silly things that in the past we were bullied for, you know. But having that grand connection between us is so good. And with Body and Soul, I think as performers, we were able to find good like wavelengths between each other, and have that connection at the table as well. So there's just so much beautiful connection to have. And it's just one of the core tenets, I don't know. One of the core aspects of being a human, of our survival, is connecting with each other and finding community
I think
compared
that's
to just wanting to, knock over your neighbor's house and take over their land or something.
right. Well, I think that's a beautiful place for us to go and take a break here. So stay tuned, folks. We'll be back for our second half on Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist, here with Mark J., TTRP producer, creator, gamer, the whole shebang. So stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back.
Discover the power of music to heal and uplift. Introducing NeuroVibe, where rhythm meets recovery. NeuroVibe fuses ambient music textures with rhythmic layers to create music that goes beyond relaxation. It's crafted to resonate deeply, perfect for relaxation, self-reflection, or therapeutic sessions. NeuroVibe invites you to connect with your inner self through immersive sound. Explore NeuroVibe today on SoundCloud and experience the transformative power of music. Tune in, find your vibe, and discover what NeuroVibe can do for you. For more information, check out NeuroVibe on SoundCloud today at soundcloud.com/NeuroVibe-brainspotting. NeuroVibe is intended for general wellness and relaxation purposes and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Explore NeuroVibe now on SoundCloud. Dive in, find your rhythm, and feel better with NeuroVibe.
Our lives and the world around us can get messy and frustrating. Untangle and Grow Counseling's focus is to untangle that mess and make sense of it so you have a good foundation to build and grow from. Visit us on the web at untangleandgrowcounseling.com. Perry Clark offers individual psychotherapy, couples and family therapy, and adolescence therapy from a variety of coping materials and resources. Visit untangleandgrowcounseling.com for more information.
Voice America is on LinkedIn. Connect with us today.
You are listening to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. If you have a question or comment about our podcast, send an email to pclark@untyingknotspodcast.com. That's pclark@untyingknotspodcast.com. And now, back to the program.
Welcome back to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist, here with Mark J., producer, TTRP player, writer, creator, former Army medic, and has played a god of death.
Thank you. It's really a treat to be here.
Great.
Wait a minute. Oh, that's so weird. Sorry. When you say Army medic in the same sentence with God of Death, it makes it feel so weird. like, like I was just arbitrating who lives and dies. No, I tried to save everyone in those days. So sorry.
But if anything, that at least shows some of the duality of saving life and also the respecting of life on its way out.
Absolutely.
So I know that will be a conversation between you and your therapist at another point in time.
Oh gosh.
Because I know as I've been listening to your podcast, I know you've talked to several of your people on podcast, which is called None Shot. We're going to have a link for that in the show notes as well. And I know you guys have talked about therapy that you've had, that they've had as well, and that too.
Yeah, I think therapy is kind of crucial for a lot of people of color to really slow down and be allowed to unpack their experiences, their lives, their joy, their pain in a safe space.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've said this a million times before, and it's probably something I read out of a book anyway. So I'm a real Carl Rogers kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
But the being listened to is such an amazing gift to give and receive. To be heard is such an amazing gift to give and receive. And it's a very, in my opinion, very rare one, because you are not always being heard
Mm-hmm.
in a way that is to me effective or helpful. Um, so yeah, that's all I'll say about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But I think that's some of what you also have provided with Nunshot.
Yeah. So besides being an Army medic, I used to be an addictions counselor at a hospital. Um, and I was learning a lot of skills and using a lot of skills to help clients in a very short-term environment, to find hope within themselves. And so I feel like I'm bringing those skills to the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
to listen to people and to find out where their real interests are and find out what they want to get into and what they're passionate about. Um, but yeah, that's what I like to bring on my interview style, which I think is kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I hope people like it as they're on the show and as
So,
they're listening to it.
well, I've been enjoying listening to it. I got to also ask, where did you come up with that title for your show?
Oh yeah, so
Nunshot.
I was playing in a game with the um I can't remember the name of the Discord server. It's an all black Discord server, and I was playing in a game, and it was a level 20 game. I don't know why the DM decided y'all gonna be level 20 characters because
Mm-hmm.
it's just nobody knows what's going on. Anyway, we were supposed to play the game that night. At 7 o'clock, we started talking. Just talking before games, just chatting it up. 7 o'clock rolled into 7:30, rolled into 8 o'clock, rolled into 9 o'clock, rolled into like almost 10 o'clock. It was just us talking and connecting and fantasizing and just chopping it up. And when we all looked at the time, it was like it was 10 o'clock or whatever, and said we were supposed to play the game today, but we just talked, and that was even probably more helpful, more beautiful than playing the actual game. And I was like, yeah, we played a nun shot today, which is like the a typical one single game is called a one shot. So
Mm-hmm.
today we played a nun shot, which is none. There were no games, but we played
Mm-hmm.
anyway. So that's kind of where that came from. That name came from for me. NONE-SHOT. It's just when you're not playing a game and you just talk and you just chopping it up
Mm-hmm.
and getting to know each other, which I think is makes any kind of game you're playing better in any case. So.
Very nice. Gotcha. Yeah, I can see that. I can see it also in the folks that you've had on that I've been able to have a chance to listen to. Still got 6 more episodes to go through, but yeah.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy them. I think they get better as they go as they go along. I know early on I was really just trying my best. So I hopefully you enjoy them with each continuing episode. I do have some plans to record new episodes coming up in the next month or two. I've
Good.
been kind of on a break since Big Bad Con because like that's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of um just kind of holidays and people's schedules are all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to keep recording in the next couple of weeks and hopefully have some more amazing episodes.
Very much so. So then in that case, let's pop back to that Big Bad Con and the post you did on at that time,
Mm-hmm.
the one I'm not going to even mention at this point in time, uh, social media site,
Yeah.
uh, that prompted a lot of responses that had people going, "Me too."
Yeah. Yeah. So I posted a couple months ago. I was laying in bed and just figuring out my morning, and there's the meme of like, of course I don't know, people like, of course I'm a conservative and blah blah blah. And also I wrote, of course I'm a person of color. I can't even remember what it was fully. Um, in any case, uh, there was a lot of response to it, and I was really surprised. And I didn't know quite how to react to them, and I didn't like any of the responses, and I think I only like responded to one because I wanted to for everyone to who was responding just to feel like I'm not the center of this tweet.
Hmm.
Like I don't want to put myself in the center of it because everyone's coming in to share their experiences. And I was so surprised to see people of kind of every echelon of the TTRPG space that had a very similar experience of being tokenized,
Hmm.
of not being seen, of not being heard, of their work not being seen to be good enough, despite the years, decades of experience and talent that they actually have. Their work is not good enough. Their voice isn't the right voice.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I was I said this in a panel, but there were some of the responses that made me want to cry. Like honestly, it's like you either laugh so hard that you go insane or you cry. But just seeing people really come out and speak their truth of being marginalized in this gaming space um, was, I don't know, I thought it was really powerful. And I'm glad that people in that moment were able to share their experiences and then be heard individually in their own spaces, their own
Hmm.
communities. But I'm glad that experience happened. It's just something that everyone in this gaming space, which is very like narrow and small anyway,
Hmm.
but something that everyone kind of needs to understand. Um, and on the flip side of that, which is um, unfortunate, it's fortunate and unfortunate, but I feel like if I ever want to do a viral post, I'll say racism, something, 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 something. If I ever read a post, I'm like, y'all, I'm having a good day on organized projects, it's dead. Nobody
Hmm.
cares.
Hmm.
Nobody cares. But if I say like, oh, look at this racist thing, the whole space shows up to participate, communicate, and like, oh, we got to make these changes. So they're definitely there when people of color are being mistreated or maligned or unsupported. But when it comes time to support the things that we're actually doing, the things we take pride in, the things we're showing our skill and our talent,
Hmm.
yeah, the support's not as strong for sure.
As much as I hate to say it, that there is that aspect of the love of drama and conflict over the championing.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Or
woo,
enjoying a train wreck hot mess.
yeah, yeah. We It's just the function of a society, as I was saying earlier, which is we like to move on to the next thing as soon as fast as possible, to the next
Hmm.
tragedy, to the next tragedy, to the next tragedy, without ever really sitting down and focusing on the first one and helping to solve that, and
Hmm.
how maybe solving that first one wouldn't cause the next 10.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's a big one to slowly begin to process in therapy.
oh yeah, yeah,
To understand how patterns, especially old patterns, are still very current.
to say the least, to say the least. I'm blessed that I had my first, I think my first therapist was exceptional.
Hmm.
Um, and she was very patient with me. She's also a woman of color. Um, and she was able to help me process and work with me with CBT and some behavioral things, while also seeing my perspective, and really, really got me through a tough time in my life.
Mm.
And then in between her, I had some really bad therapists which I'm bad for me. They were bad for me.
Mm.
The value judgmental therapist is depends on the individual.
Hmm.
But they were bad for me because they were oversharing. I had one who told me she loved me. I had one who was writing me emails about her pregnancy. Okay, yeah, I like that face you make
Okay.
because it makes me feel like I'm not crazy. Um, I had some rough therapists, and I had another one who was exceptional in between then. I was with her for about a year. But there is as with all industries and people, and everywhere you look,
Mm.
there's going to be people who are highly exceptional. There's going to be people who are in the middle, and people who are, um, just getting by
Hmm.
with the piece of paper on the wall.
Yeah, which is one of those aspects of because you definitely mark some. Oh, baby, those are some violent ethical boundary violations there. But one of the key big ones too, which I think this also leads into our myth and reality questions around
Mhm.
mental health, is you're going to be dealing with some very vulnerable stuff. You need to be able to be comfortable with who you're going to be vulnerable with.
Yeah,
That's not every
absolutely.
person,
No,
even
no.
if they're well intending as a therapist
Yeah, I was thinking
or
about this
doctor.
earlier today, and there was an old radio show, and their kind of response to everything is, "Oh, you should go get therapy." And I was thinking about that today, and I was like, "Well, therapy doesn't." And these are kind of the words of my mentor echoing back in my ears of like, when you say therapy, that literally means almost anything.
Hmm.
It could mean art therapy. It can mean horse therapy, dogs, working with dogs. It can mean CBT. It could mean
Hmm.
the Freudian. It could mean anything. There's many many types of therapy. So when you say therapy, it's like, what do you even mean?
And we do
And
now have role playing TTRP
there you go.
therapy as
Yeah,
well.
and I'm glad that's there because it helps people. I know I'm really good with a lot of skills, and communication and developing just different styles of play, which is dope. But yeah, the myths and truths about mental health. That the truth is that there's a therapy therapist for you. The other truth is it's going to be real hard to find them sometimes.
Sometimes.
Because the insurance can be a mess, the locations can be messed, the timing can be messed. They may be fully booked because they are that dope. Um, but the important thing is if you do need help, you seek that help. You seek professional help, in my opinion. You can seek other help as an adjunct, be it kind of working out or coaching, etc. But professionals are usually the best. But as I said, some of them are, just doing their own thing in their own world.
Yeah.
So it's got to be like any of the other relationship you navigate. You you got to be a good pilot for yourself sometimes.
Hmm. And learning how to advocate for yourself too. And that
Yeah.
can be good done in good therapy. That can reveal itself in bad therapy as well, sadly.
Yeah. I've had a lot of therapists through the
Hmm.
VA, and the VA went through an overhaul in the last couple of years. The good therapist I was talking about most recently was a psychotherapist,
Hmm.
and she was very like, I'm gonna sit and listen and not say anything. And I'd get really mad when she did that because like, why aren't you talking? And like that was the point of her doing that, right?
Hmm.
And she was really good. I had her for a year. Um, it was just a really good relationship where I felt comfortable sharing, expressing myself after a lot of like communication between us.
Hmm.
And then the VA was like, okay, actually, we're gonna cut all that bullshit and put everyone in a box and everyone's going to get 10 sessions of behavioral therapy.
Right.
And after that, we can't really help you. Do you need to be cured? Because you did our 10 sessions. So something must be wrong with you. I'm just making shit up that the VA thinks, but they made a cookie cutter style of therapy because it's time sensitive and it's cost efficient and yada yada yada. Which, as we discovered through research and all the data from the last few years, that's less effective because obviously everyone's so different and needs different things.
Well,
But
just the time frame it takes for some people to trust.
yeah, and yeah. Now I'm upset. So for me, I've had great therapists. But when I think of all the other veterans who literally need their hands to be held sometimes. When I was working as an addictions counselor, I was working with a veteran and she was breaking down and like, okay, you're not supposed to like touch your clients, but I reached across the table and I just put my hand on her hand. And I was just like, you just need you need a connection right now. You just need to feel like you're not alone. But yeah, veterans and other people, some people just really need their hands to be held, not physically, but just to be walked through the paces of mental health and recovery and just processing their feelings.
Very true.
And
not everything.
You can't do that in 10 sessions because the first session is intake and you don't really do anything there. And then you have 9 more sessions and do you only hope that you can get better? Anyway, it's a whole mental health, the field, the profession, the history, it's all like complex and complicated.
Yes.
Everyone is trying their best, but
very sadly that, and who's influencing and who's not, but that's a conversation for another day. So I know you talked about bringing the podcast back, but what are some of the other things that you're doing that Apochromatic is doing? Because I know we're coming up on Black History Month, and I know the link that I got from you guys and filled out and probably didn't fill out well for myself.
Don't worry about it. That's one of the things we're reviewing now is like, okay, maybe we are asking for too much information, but no, Apochromatic Unlimited, we did a really cool but toned down Black History Month celebration last year, and I wanted to continue that this year with way more playing in advance and bring a lot of really talented people from my team to help me put everything together. And it's one of those things where like I think I'm organized, but then when I see people who are legit organized, I'm like, oh, like I don't know anything about organization. I don't know how to open a spreadsheet. I look at spreadsheets and I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna help me get fit. And then I'm like, okay, maybe I won't do this. I don't really know what I'm doing. But yeah, I got a really great team helping organize Black History Month celebration for the month of February. We're running multiple games. We're raising funds for Black Girls Rock, which is a really cool charity. Excuse me. And we just want to bring people together to play games. And again, not to be mad or upset or just be hurt like a lot of us are a lot of the time, but to just enjoy each other's company and play and just have a good time and just celebrate ourselves and celebrate our lives and our experiences through tabletop role-playing games. Because I think that's one of the powerful things about these games is you can bring people together from all different walks of life and have a good time.
All right. I know I consider tabletop taming and just gaming in general sort of my social activity. And I know also had the interview with Logan, the GM, who will be starting off. And I think it'll be his interview, and then your interview is what I'm thinking of setting the schedule for. So it'll be airing in for February. And we'll be able to give you whatever boost we can as well.
I appreciate that. I really do. I'm always trying to connect with more people. And when I see the breadth of people of color in the space, I'm always wowed because there's so many more of us than I could ever imagine. And that's really beautiful. But at the same time, I'm like, I want to connect with everybody, but like I literally physically and spiritually can't because it's just so many. But I'm always happy to work with yourself in different groups across the spectrum to bring people together so we can enjoy each other's company, really.
Lovely. Well, I think that's about where we're going to go ahead and call it for today. Where are some other places people can find you if they want to basically catch up more of your work?
Look up my podcast, None Shot with Mark J, on Spotify and RSS feed and those kinds of places. You can find me lurking around the Apochromatic Unlimited Discord server. You can reach out to me through Apochromatic Unlimited. You can check out our Patreon, which you can definitely help support us. I know that I've got a lot of projects in the future that I want to help. I want to pay professional editors and not just pay out of pocket, which I'll do, but any support would be really helpful. You can find me on Blue Sky. I'm not even sure where I'm at on Blue Sky. I think I'm GM Mark J on Blue Sky. And I used to be on Twitter, but nobody cares about that anymore. Don't find me on Facebook because I'm not even there anymore. But yeah, definitely come and support Apochromatic Unlimited. We've got some really good things. We have some really cool projects in the future. I'm going to be dropping some really fun horror-themed actual play TTRPG shows this summer. And we've just got a lot of cool stuff going on the pipeline. So definitely check us out.
And I got a person you definitely should talk to and maybe should have on your podcast. Bridget Jeffries.
Say it one more time.
Bridget Jeffries of Symphony Entertainment. You definitely should talk with her.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah. Let's make that connection.
If you're listening, Bridget, poke you there, but otherwise I'll see if I can also do an introduction as well.
Very kind of you. Appreciate it so much.
Not a problem. Well, thank you for being on the show and continue the discussion, and looking forward to what you're bringing in for this month of February.
All right. Thank you. And thanks for having me.
All right. So stay tuned, folks. We got more coming up for this month of Black History as well. And sadly, because of some travel and some other family issues at the moment, you're probably going to get a bunch of rebroadcasts this month just because of the way life is going. But we're going to have more episodes for you, and stay tuned.
Thank you for tuning in for Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. Be sure to join your host, Perry Clark, for another episode on the podcast coming soon on the Voice America Empowerment Channel.